So, today I want to talk about entering a conversation using your research. So, when I say the conversation, I'm using a metaphor for the way that texts talk to each other. So, you don't just write out of nowhere. Nothing appears ex nihilo out of nothing. You are always responding to something. So, what you're responding to is often someone else's ideas. And so when I say the conversation, I'm talking about within whatever discipline you're entering in, the way that people have been talking back and forth to each other over time. And you, as a member of that discipline, are entering into that conversation, that you are becoming a full participant in that discussion that they're having about that discipline. So, as we do research, we listen to other people and then we enter into conversation with them by responding to their ideas. And so we build on cumulative knowledge this way. So, one person has an idea and another person says, well, there's parts of that that make sense, but I have this evidence over here, so let's modify it to that. And then another person looks at that and says, okay, but I have this evidence, so we need to modify it a little more. And this builds on itself the same way that when you're hanging out with your friends and you suddenly realize that somehow you got from talking about the latest Marvel movie to discussing, I don't know, traditional material practices of making paper in Japan or something like that, and something completely random, and you don't know really how you got from one place to another, but everyone was kind of along with you on the way. Research is exactly the same. So we start at one point and we wind up at another point, and we do so through a process of exchange back and forth between different researchers. So you'll hear me sometimes talk about they say and I say moves, which is a way that we can reference ourselves and position ourselves in that conversation. So when you enter into a conversation with your friends, for instance, you don't just barge into the conversation. That would be rude and it doesn't do any good. No one really wants to listen to you then. You listen for a while and then you position yourselves relative to what someone that you're responding to is saying. You say, I hear what you're saying when you say this, which is a they say move, but what about this? And that's an I say move where you're introducing a new idea or a modified idea into the conversation. You're introducing your opinion. So, as researchers, part of what we do is we look at what other people are saying about what we're researching, and we respond to it with our own information. That may be new information, or it may be a new combination of information, or it may simply be a affirmation of something else. And so we can respond in very simple ways. We can respond by saying, yes, I think you're right. No, I think you're wrong completely, and here's why. And yes, but, or well, maybe. So those are fairly obvious ways to respond, of course. And we can do the same thing with our research. So when we read something and we want to respond to it, or we see something, or we observe something, then we can respond with, yes, this is what's happening, and let me add more evidence to the pile. Or, no, this seems like it might be the case, but I have this other evidence over here, and it suggests this other thing, so this is why I'm saying no. Or maybe, which is actually a very common way in academic writing and in a lot of different research fields to respond, where you say, okay, so this seems logical. There's some holes in it, and here's where those holes are, and maybe we can fill them, but also maybe we need to modify the idea. So this yes but method is extremely common. And you you respond with this combination of they say and I say, where you combine I hear what you're saying and here's what I have to say. This is what other people have said and this is what I have to say. And you mix and match those in different response combinations. Now, research is not only shaped by the conversation, by what has been said before, but also obviously by your rhetorical situation. So who are you talking to is going to shape what kind of information you consider valid for that particular research. Likewise, what is your topic is going to limit what kind of research is valid, what kind of research methods are effective. And in the same way, who you are is going to limit what kind of research methods you have available to you and which are going to match with your ethos, that is, your persuasiveness based on who you are as the author and what resources you have accessible. So, me as a rhetoric and composition person, I'm typically going to use research methods that are accepted in my discipline just because that's what I'm able to do and that's what would be persuasive with my PhD in rhetoric and composition. Likewise, someone who has their PhD or whatever in economics is going to use an economic model possibly to describe exactly the same phenomenon. And we may be agreeing but disagreeing on how to model that simply because of our field. So where does your literacy narrative, your autoethnography, fit into all this? Autoethnography is a very common research method used in humanistic research fields. So some a little bit from anthropology, borrowing it. Certainly the ethnography method we borrow from anthropology. But there's also this very strong push right now to value individual voices and to use that kind of almost crowdsourcing as a way to get the necessary diversity to have a body of research that actually reflects what's going on in the world. And so what we do with our literacy narratives is we recognize that each of us has something unique to add to the conversation. And in so doing, we join the chorus, as I said in the previous video. We add something to it that only we can add because it's only our story. We're the only one who can tell that story. So the goal of this autoethnography method is positioning your voice into the chorus wherever it fits and understanding that your situation is both unique and therefore not reproducible in terms of research, but likely to at the same time fit into an accepted pattern that research at a larger scale has already described. So when we enter into the conversation, we are interested both in understanding collectively what's already been said and individually what uniquely we have to add to this conversation. And so as you continue writing this semester, I want you to think about what is it that you, uniquely positioned as an author, uniquely positioned as a researcher, have to contribute to the larger conversation.